Hello, my name is Alex, and welcome to Eclectic Eccentrics, a series in which we will be looking at some marvellous and some not so marvellous individuals who have been described as eccentric somewhere along the way. Their stories might delight, terrify, or intrigue you, but they will always entertain. Alas, listeners, we have arrived at our final chapter as we prepare to close out Series 2. And what fun we've had along the way, I hope. Luckily, I do have one last hurrah before I bring down the curtain. Now, I do like to do something a little bit different for our series finales. At the end of Series 1, we looked at the Eccentric Club, which was a fascinating ride, but we've run out of those. So I've got something else, which I hope will be a treat for your ears. In today's episode, we are going to have a look at some eccentric activities from across the globe, starting with one of my favourites, cheese rolling. Every year in May, hordes of people get together to chase a wheel of cheese down a hill in Gloucestershire, England. The hill itself, named Cooper's Hill, is 180 metres in length and is the steepest slope in Gloucestershire. Competitors line up at the top of the hill and wait for a wheel of cheese to be launched. They then give chase. I say chase in the loosest of terms, however, as competitors usually end up tumbling down the hill, head over heels. The cheese, which is locally produced, is never actually caught, as it does reach speeds of up to 80 miles an hour. The winner is in fact the first person to cross the finish line at the bottom, and the prize? Well, they get to keep the wheel of cheese. The local rugby team also gets involved, by usefully positioning themselves at the bottom of the hill to catch competitors, whilst also dodging the cheesy torpedo. Although its origins are unknown, it is believed that this cheese rolling event started approximately 600 years ago, and may have been related to a pagan festival. The truth is, however, no one really knows. The event itself is officially unofficial, given there are no official organisers. Given this, despite the high risk of injury, no risk assessment is ever completed, and therefore there is no official medical cover on site. Injuries have, however, included broken bones and being knocked unconscious, with one person reportedly even being struck by lightning. Anyone is welcome to take part as long as you're over 18, with multiple heats running throughout the day, and more information can be found online. Speaking of cheese, our next event is sort of like arm wrestling, but instead of using your arm, one uses their toes. A historic event, evidence of wrestling with your toes can be traced back to Neolithic times. According to the TWC, the Toe Wrestling Championship, toe wrestling in the modern era started back in 1974 in Staffordshire, England. And as you can probably guess, because it's England, it all started off in a pub called the Royal Oak Inn. The story goes that a group of friends, fed up with England being serial losers, decided to interlock their toes and battle for toe supremacy. Ironically, as they were battling it out, a Canadian visitor came into the pub and took them on, and won. England remained a loser. The sport, however, slipped away into obscurity, and it wouldn't find its feet again until the 1990s, when the then landlord of the Royal Oak Inn, George Burgess, found a toe wrestling arena, an old wooden board called a toadium. Interested in the history of toe wrestling, George Burgess decided it needed resurrecting from its smelly grave, and before he knew it, toe wrestling was back with a range of sponsors, from feet cream to ice cream. It appears to be a quickly growing sport, and has even appeared on terrestrial TV here in the UK. Undoubtedly an unusual spectacle, there is certainly method to the madness. The wrestling happens with the competitors facing each other and interlocking their big toes together. They then try to pin their rival's foot to the board. It's best of 3, with competitors swapping foot every round. I must say, I tip my shoes to them. However, it is now time for us to put on our walking boots, as we are heading off to America, via Norway, for a modern eccentric event, the Frozen Dead Guy Days. Frozen Dead Guys Days is an annual festival which started in 2002, held in Colorado. The curious thing about this festival, however, as with many eclectic events, is its history and how it all came about. Back in 1989, in Norway, a chap called Bredo Morstel died. His grandson, however, had other ideas about this whole death business and decided that he would cryogenically store his grandfather until such a time that medical technology could bring him back. Through careful storage, Bredo's body was transported to America and was eventually stored in the town of Nederland in a shack behind the family's unfinished house. The house remained unfinished, however, and soon the family were faced with eviction as they were breaching local ordinances. Faced with the fear of the body thawing out, the family reported their concerns to a local reporter, who swiftly informed the town hall. The town quickly introduced a law to ban such practices. However, given the local response and the publicity, a grandfather clause was added, allowing Bredo's body to be kept in a cryogenic facility. Over the years, caretakers in charge of caring for Bredo's body have come and gone. These caretakers are responsible for transporting the dry ice necessary for the bodily preservation. But what do you do when you have such a cool resident? You own it, of course. To celebrate their town's eccentricity, Frozen Dead Guys Days was created. The festival, which happens on the second weekend of March, hosts a series of events, including coffin races, bar crawls, and ice plunges. There is also live music, costume parties, and interactive experiences, such as themed escape rooms. Finally, one of the most popular events, I imagine, is the opportunity to go on a tour of Grandpa Bredo's resting place. Chilling stuff, indeed. But we are now heading back to the UK, which does seem to have more than its fair share of curious events. And this one is definitely peculiar. And yes, it all began following a visit to the pub. Back in 1983, following an afternoon of drinking, David Kelland found that he needed a wee whilst on his way home. Finding a quiet corner of a field, he got on with business and relieved himself. As he looked down at the ground, undoubtedly trying to avoid peeing on his shoes, which is easier said than done after a few pints, he noticed that where he had just whizzed, that worms were starting to appear. An idea came to him. It was therefore in 1983 that the first worm charming competition was held in the village of Blackawton. From then on, the competition has grown into a festival of fun, with people from all over the place coming to charm worms out of the ground. But how does it all work, I hear you wonder? Let's wiggle into it. Teams are made of 3 people: a charmerer, a pickerer, and a counterer. Each team has their own plot, which is a metre square, and then everyone has 20 minutes to get as many worms out of the ground as possible, with this part of the process being called worming up. You are not allowed to dig or fork the ground, nor are you allowed to pour harmful liquids onto the ground. Basically, anything which can hurt the worms is a no-no. Beyond that, however, anything goes. The winners are, of course, the team who've managed to charm up the most worms. And don't worry, the worms are kept quite safe, for the organisers wait until the birds have gone to roost for the evening before they then return the worms safely to the soil. Several events are held all over the world. However, I bet most of you are curious about the world record for the most worms charmed. Well, back in 2009, a 10-year-old by the name of Sophie set the world record for the most worms raised during a WWCC event, the WWCC being the World Worm Charming Championship, of course. Sophie raised a total of 567 worms. Sterling work. We do not have time to try our own worm charming, however, as we have a long journey ahead of us as we head to our final eccentric event. Now get ready, because we are off to Japan. Ear protectors at the ready. Things are about to get loud. In Tokyo, there is an event where the aim is to make a baby cry. Yes, listener, you heard that right. The aim is to make a baby cry. Any parents listening, I'm sure you can't believe what you are hearing, nor will you believe that if you want your baby to cry, you also have to pay £80 for the privilege. What is this event? I hear you cry. See? Crying? You're getting the gist now. The event I'm talking about is, of course, the Naki Sumo Crying Baby event, held every May in Tokyo. And the event unfolds as such. First, your child must be aged between 6 and 18 months. You then pay for your entry, and this is sometimes done by a lottery given how popular the event is. Over 100 babies are entered into the competition. And after that, you dress your baby up in some fancy garb before handing your child over to a sumo wrestler. With one baby each, 2 sumo wrestlers then enter the arena with the aim to make your own baby cry first. To encourage the tears to run and the wails to wobble, different techniques are used both by the sumo wrestlers and judges alike. Babies can be bounced up and down, scary faces pulled, and loud noises bellowed. Some will try chanting "naki, naki, naki," which means cry, 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 and in some events, judges will put on a traditional Japanese mask in an effort to scare the baby. Should both children cry at the same time, it is the child with the loudest cry that emerges victorious. When the babies begin to cry, the sumo wrestler will hold the baby aloft and blessings will be bestowed upon the child. This is the important bit, for, according to Japanese folklore, a crying baby has the power to ward off evil spirits, and a strong cry indicates that a child will grow up strong and healthy. The festival itself is over 400 years old, and is free to go and watch, should you wish to spend a day listening to the mellifluous tones of children crying. And now, listeners, I am concerned that tears may actually begin to flow as we have reached the end of the episode, and therefore the end of Series 2 of Eclectic Eccentrics. What a ride it has been. From dandies to prophets to charming worms with we, it has been a lot of fun, and I hope, at the very least, mildly entertaining. As the sun sets on this series and the night draws in, do not fear, as I will return with Series 3 at some point in the not too distant future. Feel free to stay for a while and enjoy the stars, for the sun will rise again, revealing a whole new motley crew of eccentrics for you to enjoy. Until then, I shall simply say adieu.